Hello, hello. I want to explain how I'm using Turbo for the speedrun of Final Fantasy X, and this is only gonna be about like the HD remaster on Steam because we're gonna use Steam input for Turbo, and just trying to go through all the things that are like roughly in that area on setting up Turbo without assuming any kind of knowledge. The first thing you want to do in order to get to enable Turbo is to have Steam input enabled. If you go to your library of FF10, you should see this controller button here. And if you click that one, it should open this particular menu. If it doesn't, if the button isn't there, then you could go to Properties, Controller, and you probably have Steam input disabled at that point, so you want to go here and select Enable Steam input of this. These other settings they should be fine, like they should pop up like this, and that should be fine. And then you should get the button, but you can also, if you have the Steam overlay enabled, you do like Shift Tab for this, or whatever shortcut you have. There's also the controller setting here, and if you click that, it also pops up in the same menu. This is the like big picture kind of menu, but you don't have to actually enable big picture mode to open it. You can just reach it from here. If you have that open without Steam input enabled, I think you might also be able to enable Steam input here. Eventually it should look like this, and you start off with this official layout from Square Enix, and you can go ahead and select Edit Layout here. You don't have to make a copy, like you can just edit this and it will edit your personal copy of this, so you're not changing the official layout or anything. Before we go into the details here on what to configure, we can figure out why we actually want to use Turbo. And the obvious thing would be to mesh through dialogue. But if you're doing CSR runs, there's not that much dialogue to mesh through, but it's also quite useful in battles, and you will find, like with getting more comfortable with using Turbo, you will find more and more usages that you can do. So, for example, if we go through this battle here with cursor memory, our initial cursor will be set to special and then to flee. If we get into like any encounter, this is gonna be first if your formations are correct. And so instead of having to mesh through this, you can like do turbo to do this, and then also use Turbo here for these things, so you don't have to, like, this is just, instead of just having to mesh through all of these encounters in the same way, just hold Turbo there. Okay, now let's set it up and see what this would actually look like with Turbo. The first question is, like, what button can we use in order to do Turbo? Square might be an interesting button because it's not really used in the battle. But if we change Square to being a Turbo button, then we lose the capability of doing a Square input altogether, and well, it's not used in battle, it's used to skip FMVs. And even in CSR, there's one FMV you need to skip. So not being able to do that would be a bad idea. There are some workarounds if you really want to use Square. I'll get to that towards the end of the video. But, it would have been great if not for that. Another interesting option is the select button, or share button, or however these three dots are going to be called here. So instead of using select as an option for that, which is, I think it just zooms, it opens the help bar and it zooms the sphere grid. And we can certainly run without that. So we can change this to a Turbo button. And we want to turbo the confirm action, which is mapped to the A button. But I am actually used to having my right hand in the circle button as confirm. So I'm gonna map this to B because I have the game I have controller settings reconfigured in the game so that my confirm button is actually circle or B, and my cancel button is X or A. So I'm gonna do this with B. So you can go to, you press this one, you select the button that you want to do, and then you go to this cogwheel here and change the settings of this. Regular press is fine, go to settings, and then you want to switch this one on. And now this is a turbo button. The next thing you need to configure is the repeat rate. And this is the number of milliseconds for it to activate. So the default value of 100 means basically it's like a 10 Hertz meshing rate, like every 100 milliseconds the button will activate. And for most menus and like battles and bashing through dialogue, 66 is a good option, which is 15 Hertz. If you do it any faster, there's a chance that the game will not recognize your inputs, and this depends on how frequently the game will read inputs from the gamepad. And it needs to, in order to recognize the button as being mashed, it needs to see the button pressed in one frame and then depressed in the next frame or some frame after that, and then pressed again in the frame after that, and then again depressed. So if you mesh fast enough, faster than the polling rate of the game for inputs, it might not see those depresses and presses, and it's going to be the same effect as you holding the button. So 66 is 15 Hertz, roughly 15 Hertz meshing, which is totally fine. Ignore all the other things. I'll talk to them about them a little bit at the end, but for now we can just do that. And if we now go back to the game, and I have like frequent encounters enabled and the like supercharged cheat modes, because I don't want to focus on having to play the game right now. So now if I hold the select button, we will just do, and I select the tag here just so that we can see something. So now as long as I keep holding the select button, it's mashing the confirm button at 15 Hertz. And as soon as I let go, it stops meshing. You also want to do, if you want to really make good use of turbo, you also want to have a button, and we're just going to use the same one here. You want to have a button that you configure as a toggle turbo option. And you do that, you activate it in the same way with the same repeat rate considerations, and then you set the toggle option to true. And what that is doing is I'm now just hitting the button once, and then I can let go of the controller, and now I've toggled turbo on, and it's gonna be constantly meshing or sending the inputs as if I was constantly meshing. The downside is there's no, I don't see any kind of state whether or not it's toggled on or off, so you kind of have to remember that one. And if you press it again, it is off, and now once we actually get to a turn, then we wouldn't be auto-attacking anymore. There we go. The toggle, usually you want to have holding turbo, because that's just easy to realize when you're in turbo or not. But there are a few things where toggling turbo is quite useful. For example, in the beginning, if you have the Valor tutorial fights, once you've selected Thunder, you can toggle turbo on, and it gives you a 40-50 second window where you don't have to do any other input other than just having turbo on. So you can have a small break there. Similar thing at Isaru when you have the Aeon battle. Once you selected your first Bahamut, you can toggle turbo on and then have a 2-minute break, roughly 2 minutes, until Isaru summons his Bahamut. And the nice thing is, even with cursor memory, it will try to summon your Bahamut and it doesn't work, and it just does this noise, but it doesn't do anything wrong. So even if you accidentally take more than 2 minute break, you're not ruining anything by not toggling off ahead of time. But there are some, you can probably find some other like 20-40 second breaks here or there with this toggle option. So yeah, if you want to have some additional break option in CSR, where usually you don't have those breaks, using toggle turbo is a good idea for that. I want to also show you some other options, some other alternatives to the select button that you can use to configure. One option that I personally like to use as my main input for turbo is I'm going to do this with a so-called mode shift. A mode shift is you designate one button as a mode shift button, and unlike changing the config here, where now we no longer have a select button here, if you have a mode shift button, it still works as its original input. So you don't take away from the functionality of the button, you just give it an additional meaning. And as long as you hold a mode shift button, you have another set of configuration options here. And so I use for the face buttons, I go here, no, sorry, I don't go here, I go on this one. And here you can select create mode shift, which will give you another, just another set of configurations here. And then here you go to this one and say select mode shift, and here I am using R1 for this, which is inside battle it scrolls the turnover up, which we don't really care about. So having it like just hold doesn't really matter. So you select it here and then you cancel out of that menu. And now you can configure your inputs here. So if I want to have my turbo on the same thing here, I do I just go through this. Let's just do it on 66, just to, you know, just this once. I'm gonna leave it at 100 for the remainder of the config option because I don't want to spend the time setting exactly 66. But that's the value you want to use. And with the mode shift it gives you like 3 additional buttons for turbo for free, and I have actually configured all of those as well. So these 3 they are also turboed right now, and this one is nice to get out of menus. This one you can use like at the beginning you have to defend a couple of times, so you can like turbo that one. It's not really that useful compared to having convert button being turboed, but since we got them for free here. And I actually have, like, you can do something with the square button. What I personally have set it up is to I think numpad 2, which is my live split hotkey for changing comparisons, so I can, like, with square toggle through comparisons, but I can do whatever. So if you want to see that in action with like how the input is, and okay, the one particular thing about that is I hold my controller like this usually, where I have my index fingers on the shoulder buttons and I'm using my middle fingers for the triggers. I think that's not really how you're usually holding a controller. I think that you usually would hold a controller like this. So getting to the shoulder button is maybe a little bit more of an effort. But since I am holding the controller like this, I already have it like right there. So it's like really convenient for me to press the shoulder button. Okay, so how does it look like? It means I hold this button down, and now doing any input on those will act as a turbo. So if I do this and I hold it down, it is as if I am mashing this button right now. And you don't have to do it in this particular order. You can also hold it down and then press the shoulder button and it will turbo through it. So it's basically like, now you're holding the button, now it's turbo, now it's no turbo, now it's turbo, so you can toggle it on and off. But again, like for me, this is like a super convenient position based on like how I keep holding my controller. And the same thing for you know, if you want to defend, and you do this. So for a menu, if you have like, you do it like your cure with you now, so you can hold RB now. If you wanna use this one here, it's quite interesting. So if you can still use RB here to switch those. So you don't want to like use RB when selecting cure, but you can hold it now because now it's not doing anything. So you can do that, and you can basically turbo through these heels, and then use the cancel button to turbo out of the menu, and that gives you like a it takes a little bit getting used to, but it's like a comfortable turboing the Una heel situation thing. Another option is using the triggers. The default is that they are just setting to the trigger, and in Steam you can actually configure different actions based on how far you pull the trigger. So if you do full pull, is obviously like, you know, you go full ham on this, but if you just slightly pull on the trigger, and you can see it in the controller overlay, like it's, you know, not going all the way, that's a soft pull. And so what you want to do, if you want to use a trigger, you want to was it right trigger? Right? Yeah, it was the right trigger. Okay, so you want to move the actual trigger to the soft pull, and then you can use the full pull for a turbo. So again, this way. So turbo here. I don't think I have to actually hit close, right? Yeah, that's fine. So I want to turbo here, and here I want to do the toggle turbo thing. What that means is, in battle, if you want to use like the switching around with the trigger, you can still do that. You're not taking away that functionality. You just have to be careful to not like hit all the way through. So it's a little bit getting used to this. But you can still use that one to go through the menu. Or if you don't care about this like paging through menus, then you can also just overwrite and remove left and right trigger as an option. Other than that, inside in battle, I think L2, the left trigger, doesn't actually do anything, and the right trigger scrolls through the turn order. So I set left trigger to have it on hold. So if I hold left trigger right now, it's like mashing turbo, and right trigger is my toggle button, where I can press it once and it'll activate it, and if I press it again, it'll deactivate it. So these are very convenient to use them. And while I have set it to the left trigger, is if you ever want to do tracking, RNG tracking, then you kind of have to play one-handed for some time, because you use the other hand to, you know, work your tracker. You have to do a bunch of inputs there. And so if you have it on the left side, that means I can activate turbo just by only using my left hand, and I don't have to, you know, if I have to menu anywhere, like switching, you know, doing some kind of inputs, and then like going here, I can just also quickly hit L2 to kind of have the confirm button for that. So if I want to, for whatever reason, do that, which you never want to do, but you know, you can menu a little bit in battles, and you can do that, and you can only do that all with your left hand. So you have your right hand free for RNG tracking, or you know, if you want to use your right hand, then of course you can just swap it around. Another way that you can configure this, you can go to joysticks, and you can also have like additional things on those joysticks, and we don't use the right stick really in the game to do anything. And you can have an outer ring command. So if you go on, I think this time it's settings here, if you go on these settings, there's this outer ring section here, and this is the default thing. There's some text here which explains that if you imagine this particular slider as at the very left is your stick being centered in the middle, and at the very right it's as if you hit it all the way to the end. Once you've reached that particular threshold, it counts as outer ring. You can also set turbo here to do this. And now if I'm in the game and I like start pressing my right analog stick far enough, at some point it's gonna count as an outer ring, and obviously, you know, you just like bump it through the end. And so you can also do like turbo that, which might be a quite comfortable option to just hold, keep holding the right analog stick into some way. And it doesn't take away from anything because like we don't use the right analog stick anyways. Yet another interesting option, and the next ones, they depend on the kind of controller that you have. This is a PS5 controller, but also like on the PS4 controller, you have these trackpads in the middle, and you can remap those. The default is to have start and select. So even if you select, you have another select, you have an actual select here, so if you actually need that one at some point, you can actually use it. Or you can use the trackpad here, and one thing that is interesting to do is to separate this between touch and click. So for example, you could select the enabling the turbo on touch and toggling the turbo on click. So if I go back to the game, if I just slightly, like if I just rest my thumb on the trackpad, it's like touching it, and this is like, as you know, meshing turbo. If I don't have it on, then it's no longer meshing, and I can also click it to activate it. So you have like both in one action, and this might be really interesting to to do. But yeah, you have to have this trackpad. So if you're using some other controller, then you can't configure that, of course. And if you're using a PS5 controller as well, you also have this button here, which is this microphone mute button, and you can also put something on there. We don't have to go through this configuration again. But it's also a button that is otherwise not being used at all. I think those are all the useful those are all the useful buttons that are options to map something. And we've only had battle stuff right now. If you want to mesh through dialogue, it's the same thing. And you might be thinking, well, can I actually mesh through circuit here? So one thing, like if you do it with the mode shift like I do, where you hold the right button, it doesn't work because you switch through, the characters here. So if we configure this to be 66, and we do that. So if I do it now, okay, so this is what I actually wanted to show. So if you want to use this one here and you have it configured to like the 66 milliseconds, and you want to use it, you'll see that like nothing really happens, because the sphere grid is actually polling at a slower rate. And so this is similar to what I explained in the beginning, where it's now meshing faster than the game checks for inputs, and it's not some of those inputs might come through if you're just like misaligned enough, but this is nowhere near turbo meshing, right? If I just mesh manually here, it's much faster than that. So if you want to use one of those plenty options you have for sphere gridding, then you want to do just like 133 is maybe a good option if you just halve the speed again, and then you can use that one to do like turboing in the sphere grid. But I don't really recommend turboing in the sphere grid anyways. It's probably too easy to just do it wrong. So this might take some time to getting used to it. I want to go through what are those other settings, what the other settings that we have, what do they mean? We've just been ignoring them for now. Haptic intensity is, I don't know, I have vibration disabled anyways, so I don't care about that. Start and end delay is, well, what it says. Or we want to have the turbo meshing immediately. We don't want to have some time of delay until it actually activates. Toggle we already have. Interruptible here is if you have like multiple settings on the same button, you can have one interrupt the other one. If we go to this one here, and so the square button, where I in the beginning said it would have been nice if we could use the square button, I can actually add an extra command here, and I can set it to the turbo thing, this one, and I can switch it from regular press to a long press, which means it's only going to activate after I have held the button for some time. I don't really know what the long press delay is. Oh yeah, you configure it here. Okay, so you hold it for 450 milliseconds and then it starts turboing. And on this one, you would have interruptible set to true, which is the default. Okay, if you want to use, like I can't really show the square as a default action because it's, it doesn't do anything, but usually like if I hit it like this, that would just issue square commands. And the interruptible bit means it is waiting until it knows that I'm doing the short press, which is like waiting until I release the button or until I have it held for this long press threshold, which was 450 milliseconds. So if I keep holding it, at some point it'll go into turbo mode, and we use it like this. It might not actually matter if you're using it for battles, because you can just hold it while the battle fades in, and by the time you get to actually do any inputs, this long press threshold will have been it's already hit, and that means you can still use square for hitting it to do like the FMV skip. But I think it's like generally, if you want to use it for meshing or in menus or something else, like having to wait this menu is maybe not the best idea. The other thing is, this is unrelated to turbo relay, but we can do, if we do cycle commands, we can add multiple commands, and the default is that it will change whatever command is doing every time you press it. So if I press it now, it's like it's alternating. Okay, let me actually disable battles here.
I'll be right back.
It's alternating between left and right. So every time I press it, I go to the right or to the left. But I can also then enable turbo and make the rate like a little bit higher. And if I keep holding it now, it is basically holding left for these 750 milliseconds and then holding right, so you can like get yourself a a free grind button if you want. I don't know if that's like how far that is on like touching on like being a macro and no longer a turbo thing. So that is probably questionable, and I wouldn't do it. Yeah, this is what you could do with the cycle command option. Okay, I think that is everything about like turbo that I could tell you. But since we're already here, one final thing. If you go to this menu here with escape, and you go to key bindings, usually we play the game with controller, right? So we don't need the keyboard. And you can actually, if you set the keyboard, you actually have two sets of options that you can do. So you can either have like one option if you actually do want to play with a keyboard, and then use a neat trick with another keyboard setting, or you can use the trick for both keyboards. And the trick is that we can do like Auron's limits for that. So we use it twice in the run, right? And the first one is down, left, up, right, L1, R1, and then like either X on circle or circle and X. Like, since I have them swapped, I don't really know what the actual order is. And if you map them here to like a single row on the keyboard, right? If you look at down is the first input, that is A, and then the key next to it would be S, which is left, which is the next input in the limit sequence, and then you do up after that. So you go through Auron's limit sequence and you map that to these actions here, which is those 4 inputs. Then the confirm and cancel at the end, and then also change character left and change character right, which are your left and right inputs. So if you have that configured and then you go into battle, and it's time to see if we can get a turn in with Auron. You know, for a proper setup I would have put in out of formation so I can swap him in, but it doesn't matter. So if we're doing this now, instead of having to like do the input here on the controller, we can go through the keyboard and then just like slide through this, and that's the limit input. Why do we even care if we get the if you get fast enough on the controller, you can also just do it. But with Auron's limits, as well as like Waka and Tidus, those 3 limits that have a timer on them, it does more damage the faster you can do this. So if you finish the Auron limit when the timer is like half a second left, it's doing not as much damage as if you were to finish it with like 3 seconds left. So if you like swipe on the keyboard, you can almost always like hit it perfectly and quite fast, and you make the most damage at the beginning. So you can, I don't know how much it saves at the end, maybe like 1 attack or so if you're lucky, but you know, want to go fast. So there's that. That's everything now. Hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.